Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, everybody. This is Sandy. I am a dating and love coach at lastfirstdate.com. Welcome to Last First Date Radio. We are a featured show about attracting and sustaining healthy relationships. I love bringing you in-depth interviews with top experts and cutting-edge authors in the field of dating and relationships after 40. And today we have a little change of events. We had a last-minute change, and I'm very excited to be speaking with life coach Teri-Lynn Wilkins about how to overcome infidelity, cheating, and betrayal. Really important topic. It's often not spoken about, and it's really wonderful that Teri is able to be with us today. As a dating coach, I love helping women over 40 become women of value. They become so kind to themselves and confident because they know their value and their worth. And just yesterday I got an email, or 2 days ago, from a woman who is with the most toxic man. I get these emails all the time, and it breaks my heart. Having sex before you're in a relationship, when the person turns over and says, "Who are you?" in the morning. And it's just so awful to give your heart away to somebody who does not treasure it. And so that is my mission in life, is to have you value yourself first and attract the love that you deserve. And every week I give you a tip on how to be a woman of value. And this week's tip is, if you want something, ask for it. And now that may seem really, really simple, but I can't tell you how many times I wanted something in life and I was afraid to ask for it, whether it was a raise at a job or maybe even somebody that I really had a crush on, but I was afraid to show it, or I wanted to speak to somebody who I thought was somebody way out of my league. Whatever it is, if you want it, you need to ask for it, because you will get everything that you do not ask for. Basically, you will get nothing. So really have the courage to take a risk. And so that's a big one. I really hope that you take that away today, besides all the wisdom that Teri-Lynn Wilkins is going to share with us in just a moment. Two more things before we get to Teri. One is, please join my Facebook group, which is a private group for women over 40. It's called Your Last First Date, and it is a private support area for women who are single or in a relationship and looking for support. It's a place to come for positive support, not to come and whine and bash men. Those people are not allowed to be in the group. So apply to be in it. It's called Your Last First Date, and I would love to have you. And if you haven't grabbed my free gift, please go to my website. You can get a free guide. It's the top 10 reasons why men pull away or disappear. This is one of the top questions that I get asked so often. Why do men disappear? Why do they ghost? Why do they pull away when you think that everything is going well? I want you to stop sabotaging your love life and take back your control by being a true woman of value. And a quick shout out to our sponsor, Audible. If you go to audibletrial.com/lastfirstdate, you can grab a free Audible audiobook, and you'll get a free month of the Audible, a free trial. So go to audibletrial.com/lastfirstdate. And now for Teri-Lynn Wilkins. She is a life coach. She was married 18 years. She had children, a career, wealth, and she had an affair and walked out of a life that looks like what every woman dreams of. And that began 8 years of crucifixion as the other woman, and then rejection as the one cheated on. She faces the demons of family patterns and childhood wounds, and she finally arrived at her own resurrection. She has been in practice for 15 years. She was featured on HGTV and national publications, and Teri is shedding light on the often taboo topic of infidelity, bringing lasting healing to both sides. Join me now for episode number 248, Overcoming Infidelity, Cheating, and Betrayal, with Teri-Lynn Wilkins. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Sandy. How are you?
I'm great. Well, so first of all, I want to get this out up front. This whole thing just totally blew me away. Last week we had on a man named Derek Laviola, and he was wonderful. And it turns out that unbeknownst to Teri, they had both been booked on my show, and they are a couple. And I found that out late last night. So, Teri, tell us a little bit about that relationship before we dive into the topic, because I am so fascinated by how you two got together. So tell us.
First of all, crazy small world, right? We didn't even know. Actually, it's a pretty simple story. He found me on Facebook, which is not very romantic, but he is a former Navy SEAL, retired after 24 years, wrote a book, and became a relationship coach, and found my profile online, my business profile, and thought I would be somebody good to network with. I thought he lived in Hawaii. He didn't know where I lived. Long story short, we both lived in Colorado, 20 minutes away from each other, and the rest is sort of history. Yeah. No one more surprised than me, I'll have to tell you that.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I thought he lived in Hawaii too, because his email address has Hawaii in the the end of the email.
He was there. So he was born in Colorado and moved back here. He was actually in training to become a pilot among his other talents, and is now flying airplanes as well as coaching.
So one thing that you said, and this I loved, and maybe this can be a good segue into the topic today, but that you both really helped each other heal from childhood wounds and past pain.
Yeah.
And how you want to get this message across, and I think it's an important message, that it's not about coming to a relationship perfect, in great shape, that we have done all the work and we are just ready to go, and we're looking for somebody else who's totally cooked, as I call it. But that actually being in a good relationship can help you heal. So can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, you're 100% correct about that. I have a story of being in the therapist's office years ago, and I said, I don't understand why I'm just happy when I'm by myself. I'm just able to generate joy and love my life, and why is this so difficult? And he looked at me and said, it's easy being outside of a relationship, Teri-Lynn. So can you imagine two relationship coaches being in a relationship together? I mean, the stuff that we have waded through, but what I've learned is that there are some things that you don't see about yourself until it actually is reflected in another person and your behavior towards them. There are some triggers that do not come out unless you're with someone else and you're vulnerable and you are potentially going to be hurt. You were mentioning in your intro about the tip of asking for your needs to be met, and I loved that because sounds like such a simple thing, but when you genuinely ask in the right way, and that's some of the things that we teach as coaches, you are opening yourself up to have an answer of no. And that's why we often don't ask, because sometimes the things we ask are deal breakers. So to be in a relationship and to navigate, okay, this is who I am and this is what my needs are and these are the things that I want. Can you provide that for me, yes or no? That's some sticky territory, and it requires a tremendous amount of vulnerability, and it can also at the same time be incredibly healing. I have found that.
Oh yes, it is so healing, and also just being ready for a no, because it's not about controlling the other person's answer. And this is, I think, one of the hardest things for people is that we want a yes. We want somebody to totally buy into what we're asking for and just say, sure, I can do that for you.
Of
and
course.
Part of it is how we ask, right? And part of it is just being able to work with a no.
Absolutely. And I think you're right on, and you speak to something that's so critical of knowing your value and knowing who you are. That's a core component of knowing what's important to ask for and what's not important, the things you can compromise on and the things that are not able to be compromised.
Yeah. So let's go to cheating, and let's tie that into knowing your value. Is there a correlation between being the cheater and lacking self-worth?
Yes, as well as being cheated on and lacking self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the common go-tos, in particular for women who have been cheated on, is they say it had nothing to do with them. And I say there's a happy medium. It's not your fault that this happened, but there's something to be informed about in it. And one of the things that I learned was that, it's a mistake to say, well, I'm not a cheater and this person's a cheater and they're a horrible person and therefore, I have nothing to do with this. What I have found is that although you may not be a cheater in your relationship, may have done nothing like that, we attract who we are in our partners, in the sense that we may have the same wounds. Our behaviors may be different. We may be a woman who chooses to drink a couple bottles of wine a week instead of cheat with someone.
Right.
And so we mistakenly think we have nothing to do with them. We just pick the wrong person. And I'm not saying stay with the man. I'm just saying that if you completely dismiss it as having nothing to do with you, you're missing an opportunity to perhaps dig a little deeper and understand that there's something mirrored there for you. And I think it's an invitation to actually find that value. Sometimes not sometimes, but always we have to sort of face our weaknesses and really look them straight in the eyes before we can then embrace our strengths.
That's really, really, really true. And, you mentioned the wine, and I think that people find ways to numb themselves, and it takes on such a variety of manifestations. So it could be an addiction, it could be shopping, it could be, any one of a million
things. Yeah, I certainly can share my story of that.
Sure.
I never had sort of quote unquote negative addictions, but I climbed mountains, I raced motorcycles, I jumped out of airplanes, I started businesses, I was on TV, I did everything humanly possible to not feel that unworthiness inside of myself. And to the outside world, it looked like, wow, that's successful. And Derek actually shares the same pattern as I do. He was a Navy SEAL. He speaks Arabic. He is, accomplished, a champion swimmer. And so everyone thinks, oh, wow, that's a person to look up to, when really all of those things were the same as alcohol or drugs or anything else. They were an attempt to not feel that lack of I'm not good enough. So it can be positive things too, exercise, any number of things.
That's true. I'm glad you pointed that out. So tell us a little bit about your story, and then we'll go into the more universal, like what people can do and who's a cheater, are they always a cheater? What happened to you?
Great questions. Well, I was the most unlikely of cheaters, I have to say, so I thought. I had been married almost 20 years, never so much as looked at another man, and I pretty much this happened so fast. I started talking to someone I knew from high school, typical story that you hear online. I was pretty new to online, didn't know that there was that dynamic there, and left my marriage within weeks, literally. And the grace and blessing that I had was that I knew I wasn't leaving for that other person. I actually had enough emotional awareness, had been, a coach for a number of years by then, to know that this was reflecting something else. And so left my marriage and, left basically everything, walked out of every possession I owned, the money I had, the friends I had, even my family. Had 2 children at the time, and it was both exhilarating to be free and also terrifying. I didn't know how I was going to take care of myself, where I was going to live, nothing. And then began a journey of being cheated on the other side, which is obviously very common as well. And that took a number of years to sort of navigate many breakups, can't even, untold countless breakups. and each time another layer of realization, and always asking myself, what is it in me that is, attracting this? What is it in me that I need to see? And that saved me. And so looking back on that, I consider it the best thing that ever happened to me. And from a very genuine place, it's how I found myself. And that is what I believe it can be for anyone who is willing to do the work and really kind of look in the mirror and see what things need to be healed. And I certainly didn't intend to change my specialty of coaching to infidelity. Who wants to be the infidelity expert? But after fighting that calling for a couple of years, I kind of had almost like a commandment from the universe that you are going to do this. And I finally said, okay, yes, I know more about this than most, having been on both sides, and have a deeper and more comprehensive understanding of it, I believe, and how to heal from it. And so that's when I decided to change my specialty, and that's my story.
Yeah, it's a great story, and it's I once heard this saying, to make your mess your message, and I think the ones who do are the ones who can serve the best, because we have done the healing. We know what it takes to transform, and so you're bringing that gift to other people, which is wonderful. I actually have a similar story of why I left my husband, and I'll tell it really briefly, but then I want to hear more from you because time is going really fast. But I was miserable in my marriage, and to the outside world, it looked like I had a great marriage too, in many ways, because he was a performer. He was a national TV performer, comedian. Many people were just enamored by him, and I was not happy in my marriage for many decades, but I was kind of coasting and didn't think there was anything better out there, and I had kind of turned my whole self off down to a very low level of functioning, and started working in sleepaway camps when my kids were pretty young. And in the second sleepaway camp I went to, I'm alone, my husband is home, and he comes up on the weekends, and I'm realizing even more how much we have grown apart, and being with him was just a chore. And there was a man in camp who started connecting with me on a very deep level, like really felt seen and heard for the first time in 20 years. And it woke me up out of my stupor. It was like, oh my God, I was feeling things that I hadn't felt, and I didn't even know what they were. That's how distant I was from them. And I stopped myself from having an affair. I actually woke up to like, oh my God, get out of this marriage and don't sleep with this guy.
Good for you.
But well, it was my last string of dignity I had. But it was, it woke me up to the possibilities of love. Even though that wasn't love, it was lust. But it was just that I had turned everything off for so long. I couldn't live like that anymore, and the risk was too high. Yeah. And so I knew I had to get out. I just couldn't wait 10 more years or however long it would take for all my kids to be, out of high school, and which is what a divorce lawyer had told me to do. And
that's what everybody tells everyone to do.
Well, look, if you've been a divorce lawyer and you see the worst case scenarios of divorces that go to court and the kids are the pawns, and you think, oh my God, I can't put my kids through that. But my kids got it. Within the first hour, my daughter, who was 16 at the time, my oldest, she said to me, I'm crying because I feel really sad, but I know that you've been unhappy for a really long time, and this is the right thing for you to do. It was amazing. They know,
don't they?
They
always know. We think we're covering it up.
Yeah, and we're trying to protect them. So it's just it's an important message that we do need to take care of ourselves. Our kids see everything we do. They're like the doormen of the building. So
and they will do what you do. They will recreate a relationship where she feels not alive and not loved and not passionate, and we don't want that for our kids.
Exactly. And now my kids are all amazing, and they're high functioning, and they have great relationships, and
That's
the biggest
wonderful.
fears, because they've been assuaged because of the work we've done and the examples that we've become, I think. And so let's go to
I could talk forever about that.
I know we could get into that whole being a parent and the modeling that we do, and that's a big
Right.
responsibility. So yeah, is once a cheater, always a cheater? Because that's a question that gets asked a lot. So many people have that idea, and I'm imagining that your answer is going to be not what people think.
The reason that question is asked so much is typically by someone who's still in the relationship. They want to know, is this person going to cheat again? And my answer is it depends. It depends on why they cheated to begin with. I have a little bit unusual philosophy. I think that there's only 5 reasons that people cheat. There's 150 different subsets of these 5 reasons, but there's really only 5 reasons. And one of them happens to be that they're not happy in the relationship, and the relationship was not of quality to begin with, and you were with each other out of attachment rather than genuine passion and love. And that's the one people least want to hear and least want to absorb and least will listen to. And yet it is actually, a reason. And so if that is it, and the relationship wasn't good to begin with, it's kind of likely that it may happen again. Another reason is that you just lost connection. That's the reason everyone wants it to be. And that, of course, is fixable if you have 2 willing people who are willing to, gut it out and rebuild trust and get through it and figure out why it happened. So, it just depends which one of those 5 reasons it is.
Wait, so you told us 2? Did you tell us all 5?
Yeah,
okay.
I did not.
Not happy in a relationship. You're with each other out of attachment, not love. Is that a second one?
Yeah. That's the same one. So for some reason the relationship is not of quality. Let's just put it that way. And you were attached to each other as opposed to, genuinely in love with eeach other.
Right, and then
the second one is, these aren't in the order of commonality, but the second one is you just lost connection. You had kids, you didn't nurture the relationship, you didn't have date nights, all the typical things that everybody tries to implement once, cheating has actually happened. The third one, which is I think the most common, is that you have someone who has deep, deep insecurities. We all do. We all carry that kernel of unworthiness, but some of us deal with it different ways. Some of us medicate it, some of us overachieve to not feel it, and some of us use other people, attention from other people to not have to feel that. And that is something that, I say it's like attention from another person who thinks you're wonderful when you don't think you're so wonderful. It's like heroin. It's a very hard thing to not have to fall into. So that's really easy. One of the more uncommon, but yet it still happens, is someone who is not in touch with their own sexuality, meaning they may be gay, they may be transgender, they may be bisexual, and those are things that, it doesn't, like I said, happen very often, but it's something that can be a reason. And, when somebody says once a cheater, always a cheater, if somebody's married because they don't want to accept the fact that they're gay and they are cheating because of that, that's certainly, going to happen again, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, so I actually have, and not to take up the whole show doing that, but my free gift at the end is that document that has all of it in there, and it has much more information about all those things.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these are really important, and I've definitely witnessed all of these in the people that I've known. And all right, so cheating is pretty common. I mean, actually, when that happened to me in camp, I started getting curious with my friends about what was going on in their lives and my married friends. And I started finding out about infidelities that I was really surprised about. But people were really open. So it is pretty common, much more common than I think a lot of people believe. And so why do you think it is?
The studies are all over. Yeah, I think it's sort of passionate, this part of the whole topic. It's happening to everyone, and yet none of us are talking about it. There's so much shame and guilt and embarrassment surrounding it that when you're the person who's cheated, you don't want anybody to know. Of course, you're going to be scorned and vilified and crucified. And if you've been cheated on, you don't want anybody to know because you feel like an idiot that you didn't know, that you let it happen, that you did something wrong. And so we're all silently suffering and yet not talking about it because we don't want to feel embarrassed. And that was part of the reason I felt compelled to kind of, blow the lid off and try to talk about it as much as possible, because it's just so painful to me to watch people silently suffer when there is healing and understanding and growth and gifts that can come from that. But yeah, the commonality ranges depending on what study you determine, and also depending on what you define as cheating, right? Because we're in the technology age. So do you think sexting is cheating? Do you think, emotional cheating is the same as cheating? So the statistics run anywhere from, 17% all the way up to over 70%. And I tend to think, and you probably do as well, it's way closer to the higher number than it's the lower number.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that women are cheating more often now, or as much as men.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I that doesn't surprise me at all. And so the whole emotional affair thing that came up quite a bit. It does come up quite a bit, especially with social media. And I actually, one of the people that I had been talking to about cheating back, this is like 12 years ago when this happened, and she has a very strained relationship with her husband. Somehow they just keep thinking that being married is the right thing to do, even though they're both miserable. And both of them have had emotional affairs. She has definitely had a physical affair. And she was incensed that he was talking to a woman in a very intimate way. They were sending letters back and forth for a long time, and she was like, how could he dare do that? And I'm like, you had a physical affair with a guy. Like, you are so hypocritical. And so I actually did a Huffington Post Live about emotional affairs when this all happened to me. I was willing to speak about it, and it took a lot of courage. I had people calling me all kinds of names.
Oh, I know.
But it's just like anything else. It is important to know the why, because it doesn't excuse what happened. Like I never wanted to discuss this with my children, and I never brought it up. It wasn't their business. But my ex-husband was bent on telling them that I had an affair, and they approached me about 2 years after the divorce and said, Dad said, and I just said, look, I never wanted to discuss this with you because it's none of your business, but now that you've brought it up, I want to tell you the truth. And they each understood. Because, I don't want to be thought of in some light that isn't true for me. Was I proud of that moment, that I fell for somebody? No. Was I in a horrible, horrible situation where I was so vulnerable and so lost that I didn't even realize how lost I was? Yeah. So
I think owning it, is I had to have the conversation. I mean, my kids were little, so there was no way for them to understand, so it wasn't until much later. But I remember sitting my youngest down. This was just last year, actually. He was 12 at the time, and finally, he was ready to talk about it, and I said, absolutely. And you know what? I wouldn't take it back. And he was shocked to hear that. But it was so true for me, because mine involved, my marriage was great, but the intimacy wasn't there. And I didn't know the difference. I didn't know what passion really felt like. And so for me, it was this huge burden over 20 years, what's wrong with me. So it was such a gift to me to not have to live in that anymore. And I explained all of that to him, and it literally was a 5-minute conversation. And he, at the end of it, just looked at me and said, wow, okay. And that was it. Because I had done all my processing and I was convicted about it. There's no defensiveness about it, no nothing. This is just my truth. And children appreciate that.
I love that.
Yes, their life changed.
Yeah. Not fun for them, but but it's so important to own your truth and not apologize for who you are. It's being able to be okay with being vulnerable and saying, this is what happened and this is what I learned from it. I mean, that's the important thing. And not only did you learn from it, but you are impacting other people's lives because of it.
Right.
So that's a great outcome. And your son received a gift from you your truth, and which
I think
I'm sure made him feel valued.
Yeah, I think it's not so much divorce that damages children. It's the lack of work that the individuals do after, not understanding what happened and why, and feeling guilty and mired in shame for whatever, or regretting or feeling victimized. It's all that really damages kids. If you made a decision for yourself, and I can't say at the time I was completely clear, I mean, it was terrifying, but if you made a decision for yourself that really is honoring who you truly, authentically are, that is, in my opinion, that's actually a good modeling, even if it means leaving your marriage. And I know I'm not in majority of opinion out there with that, but it is my truth.
Yeah, and I am with you on that. I think we have to honor our truth, and it's a way for our children to honor theirs. And to me, there's nothing more important than that.
Right.
Which brings us to the end here, and thank you so much for being on the show today. I know it went really fast, and we could talk for such a long time, but I want you to be able to let our audience know what your free gift is again and how they can find it.
Oh, you bet. Thanks, Sandy. We talked about all kinds of stuff, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
It's the reasons we cheat. That is my free gift, and it's the 5 reasons. The one that we didn't cover was simply that people change, people grow, and people fall in love with other people. That's just something that happens. And so understanding whether you were cheated on or the one who cheated, understanding what's happened and why is really crucial to the healing process. So that's something that I put together, and there's a lot of explanation in there that explains how it has nothing to do with sex.
That sounds wonderful, and I know this topic comes up in my Facebook group all the time, where people are dating people who may have cheated in the past, and they always want to know, is this somebody I can trust? And so there are things that you need to do to figure out if you can trust this person, and it's not so black and white.
No,
so
for sure.
How can they find it? Tell us your website.
It's just my name. It's Teri-Lynn Wilkins. I'll spell it because it's a mouthful. TeriLynnWilkins.com. And there's just a little button on there that says so you can download the attachment from there.
Well, thank you so much, Teri-Lynn, for being on the show today and for sharing your wisdom with us. Oh,
thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thanks. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And I hope you go on your last first date very soon. Have a great one.